Hey, and welcome to the Healthy Highlife podcast. If you're new here, thank you for joining me. My name is Malcolm, a strength and mobility coach passionate about health, wellness, and fitness, but also cannabis. The goal with this podcast is to bridge the gap between those who need a bit of help and support, who may be falling victim to some of the stereotypes that surround the plant, and to those of us in the community that have figured out how to get our shit done, be productive, and still enjoy some fire. So before we get into today's topic, I'd love to hear what you guys are smoking on. I've got a pack of Gelinade from Doja, so that should be pretty good. But let me know down in the comments what you guys are going for, and let's get into it. The plan for today is I want to go down the rabbit hole on happiness and using weed as a tool for escapism. And how can we reframe certain things in order to pursue happiness from a different perspective and pretty much create your own happiness, and then alongside that use this as the tool to enhance that. So many of you, myself included, would rely on a joint in order to just escape, just to get away from the stresses of life, just to use it as something to avoid the shitstorm that's either coming our way or that we're already right in the middle of and just don't want to deal with it. And if you caught the last episode, I was talking about stress and how stress can actually be a good thing and how that affects anxiety levels and so on, and how if you avoid doing the thing, you're going to get further away from sorting out those levels of anxiety that you may be suffering from. And the same thing goes for this when it comes to looking for happiness, trying not to get into a place of using certain substances or modalities as escapism, because to be fair, the same thing can be said for things like exercise, food, alcohol, whatever. You can just put your own version of whatever you think should be in that place. Now, every now and then, having a smoke and using it as a way of just unwinding and escaping from the stress of the day, yeah, it has its place, and why not? But the problem occurs when that becomes a regular reliance. And then it becomes a subconscious habit, and you end up relying on that for no reason. And then we get into the category of mindless use. When it comes to creating change and reframing perspectives and basically realigning your lifestyle, it really starts with becoming aware of where certain behaviors and habits are leading you down the wrong path. When it comes to using cannabis, if you are someone who ends up using it to escape all the time, well, your first step will be to become aware of those moments that you're using it for that. And once you create that awareness point, you will then be able to tie that to a particular emotion or a situation or a person or whatever the context is that acts as the catalyst to the point where you feel like you need to escape. And from there, you can then go and deal with that thing. And so once you've dealt with that thing, and obviously dealing with that thing isn't always going to be an easy journey. And that then leads me into most people's misconception as to what happiness is. There's this whole like, well, once I get to this place or once I achieve X, I will be happy. The reality of that is that's not true. Personally speaking, I've succeeded in quite a few different journeys through this fitness thing, from transforming my life from 145 kilos completely out of shape to lean and all that, to then prepping for multiple seasons on a bodybuilding stage and achieving that. And every time I set out to sort of work on those goals and achieve those goals, by the time I actually got to that finishing line, I can tell you now, I wasn't any happier than I was starting it, essentially. I thought I would be happy once I got my first six pack. And don't get me wrong, once I saw a six pack, I was like, fuck yeah, I actually have a six pack. I thought I was just built never to have a six pack. But once that short little bit of dopamine passes over, you go back to normal. And happiness doesn't come from reaching that finish line. It comes from the process that you went through in order to get to that place. That saying of it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So taking value and taking moments throughout that journey to highlight little wins and points of progress, as well as points of awareness, in which case they create pivot points that allow you to make the right conscious decisions to continue progressing in the right direction. But it's exactly that journey of working up to a pivot point, then having to recognize that point, and then being able to make the right choice in order to pivot around what could have been a derailment. It's that moment there that once you learn to recognize these moments gives you that self growth. And it's that self growth that elevates you to a point where you start to see and find purpose. And once you've got purpose, it gives you a perspective of looking to solve problems with your purpose. And once you start to put into action how you're going to solve those problems behind your purpose, you end up starting to create your own happiness. Now, that sounds easy, but in order to get to that stage, we have to really work on our attainable skills, such as discipline, because discipline is going to get us to a point where we have strong mental fortitude. And that mental fortitude, that grit, that ability to white knuckle through it when the going gets tough and you have to do what you don't want to, even when you don't want to do it. That's most likely where you're going to have to pull from in the moments of pushing back against those times where you really don't want to do what you've got to do. And every time you take a step in that direction, and every time you recognize a pivot point and you take action against what your initial impulse may have been, in which case propelling you further into progress, you will allow yourself to become a version of yourself that can control the controllables. So you won't be influenced negatively by your external surroundings. You'll be controlling what you put into your mouth. You will control your movement. You will control the social circle around you. You will control the energy and the messages that you put out, the information that you take in. Once you can start to control the controllables, it makes your lifestyle a lot easier to run. And once you're taking care of that stuff, you will then have additional bandwidth to give to your purpose. And that then allows you to give more into the action, which then further reinforces your skills of discipline, because every single day, even on the days that you don't want to do it, you are still acting on your purpose in some way to just put a little notch in the belt to get us that one step down the road. But it's super important that once you've figured out the purpose behind your intentions and you've began to work on your skills of discipline and mental fortitude, that you then practice gratitude as well, because gratitude is going to be the one thing that pulls you back down to earth and highlights everything that you have, everything that you've achieved, and that you should be grateful for, because these are going to highlight those little wins and points of progress that are going to drive you further to continue pushing towards your purpose and taking action towards it. The best thing about it is, if you just start to take one little step in the right direction, the momentum will start to build and ultimately it will become autopilot. But it starts with one awareness point that you decide to consciously tweak. Once you tweak that and that becomes consistent, you choose one more consistent awareness point that you want to change, and you begin to tweak that. And taking a minute or two or three at any point in your day just to pull yourself back down to earth and be grateful for what you've achieved, what you have, what the universe has brought to you, to allow you to put out the right energy to attract more of it. This will further prove to you that happiness is not a destination, in which case using something like cannabis as a tool to escape and find happiness is also not a reasonable or productive approach. And there are those that get prescribed medication to numb these feelings of anxiety and stress and so on and so forth. But a lot of that can be dealt with. I know that it's quite a touchy subject, so I'm not, telling anyone what to do or looking to offend anyone, but quite a lot of these levels of anxiety that people are dealing with these days are usually a result of having people living in such an upregulated nervous system, these high cortisol levels, this fight or flight response pretty much all the time, in which case, it's leading to all these autoimmune diseases and crazy high levels of anxiety and so on across the world. So if we deal with some of the things that need doing and we actually downregulate our nervous system from time to time, we can actually start to reverse these effects, which for most of us are results of a compounding subconscious movement through life, just following as the surroundings are set out for. So falling into doom scrolling, eating processed foods, lacking sleep, lacking activity, lacking mental social engagement, all these little things leading us into these upregulated states, which then increases the perceived necessity to use things like cannabis to then numb and escape from all of this shit. But ultimately, that's just not going to solve the problem. So how can we use cannabis as a tool in order to help get to the bottom of this? And as a result, create your own version of your happiness. Well, as mentioned in the first episode, it really starts with setting your intention around how you're going to use it. So for one, you need to figure out what your purpose is in terms of what you're looking to achieve, what's the problem you want to solve. For example, in my case, my day job requires helping numerous people through their struggles with physical fitness and navigating how to get through life whilst making the right decisions to then end up with the right results that they're looking for, which is good, consistent baseline health with strength, stability, and vitality. But my other purpose is to help those who utilize cannabis and actually start to realign and reframe their perspectives as to how we can use it so that it becomes the positive rather than a negative tool for escapism or numbing, and just to find what we perceive to be happiness. So that's it. So number one, you find your purpose. You then start to identify the actions in which you need to take to start to execute on your purpose. And once you start executing on your purpose, you're going to start to create better energy. And that energy, along with your development of discipline and mental fortitude, is going to increase your self-esteem and confidence, which is then going to yield respect from others, which is going to further boost your self-esteem and confidence. And all of these are going to be a self-fulfilling, self-fueling in terms of giving you the drive to have to do the hard things when you don't want to do them, because you now have your purpose and your why as to why you're doing it. And so you're going to do it even when you don't want to. And then once you've done what you don't want to, and you've just built that little bit extra bit of discipline, you then go and take a moment to be grateful for what you've done and what you have and who you have. And ultimately that strengthens your purpose, which then takes you away from the need of using cannabis as a tool to escape. But now you pair the use of cannabis with the right intention. Let's say use it as part of your gratitude process, and you take a deep dive into some journaling, and you really figure out some deep thoughts as to what you're really grateful for, what you've achieved, and what you could really look to achieve some more of. So once you've created your intention behind how you're going to use it related to your purpose, you then titrate the dosage in order to make sure you don't get overly stoned, because that's not part of the intention. You make sure you choose an appropriate method of use in order to be able to control the effects. And from there, you can then start to take action on your purpose. And as I've mentioned, the further you go down the road of taking action against your purpose, the more self-esteem you're going to build, the more confidence you're going to gain. And ultimately, the fact that you're fulfilling your purpose is going to create your happiness. And alongside that, you then use cannabis as a tool to fulfill your purpose rather than avoid hard stuff that would have eventually led you to your purpose had you have seen it through. So yeah, it really starts with most people's misconception of where happiness is or what it is. It's not a destination. It's about the process and the values, the failures, the lessons, and everything that come along with that journey. That's what teaches you everything that allows you to really fulfill your purpose. And ultimately, that's then what helps you create your happiness. And recognizing these things and living in a conscious way is to catch yourself in mindless habits and patterns allows you to be both productive, positive, generally well-rounded and healthy, but also able to utilize cannabis in such a way that really isn't such a negative impact on your life. And when we can use it like that, it really is such a powerful medicine that we can get a lot from. Don't get me wrong. There are times when we do want to just go and get high. You know, we have recreational moments, sessions, friends come over. But those are moments in time. Those are not daily recreational habits. Those are every now and then when the time or the situation calls. But when it comes to daily, regular use, you're looking to make sure you've got purpose and intention surrounding the way that you use it, because that's going to keep you in check and going to give you that healthy relationship with the plant. Well, if you're still with me, I really appreciate that. If you have anything to add when it comes to creating purpose or happiness or anything that surrounds what we spoke about today, please chuck it down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, your tips, any struggles, or any future topics that you'd like to see covered in episodes to come. Just chuck it all down in the comments, and if you would hit the like and subscribe button, I would be greatly appreciative, so that we can grow the community and get the productive, positive message around cannabis out there, so we can all smoke some loud and be proud of it at the same time. And until next time, have a great week. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for listening. See you next time.